They threw my daughter down the stairs. Big mistake. You thought I was just some old construction guy, 50 years old, drinks his coffee at 6 a.m., goes to work, comes home, watches the news. Predictable, harmless. That's what they thought too. My wife's brother and his muscle. They looked at me and saw an easy target. Someone they could steal from, lie to, hurt. They were wrong about a lot of things, but the biggest mistake, they hurt my daughter. My name's Jake Collins. I'm 50 years old, and this is the story of how I taught some very dangerous people that underestimating the wrong man can cost you everything. I was sitting at my kitchen table that Tuesday morning, staring at coffee that tasted like burnt shit. My mind was somewhere else, and when your mind wanders, everything goes to hell. 25 years running construction crews, you learn that attention to detail keeps people alive. The phone rang, a no number. I almost didn't answer. Mr. Collins' professional voice, all business. This is City General Hospital. Your daughter Mia has been brought to our emergency department. You need to get here immediately. My coffee mug hit the table so hard it cracked. What the hell happened to her, sir? I can't discuss details over the phone. Please come right away. I was out the door in 30 seconds. My pickup truck screamed through traffic, running every yellow light I could find. To 25 years of steady hands and calm nerves. And now they were shaking like I was 22 again, getting shot at in Baghdad. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and bad decisions. A nurse pointed me toward the emergency bay, and my old training kicked in automatically, eyes scanning for threats, exits, anything that didn't belong. Even when there's no enemy, a soldier never stops looking. Then I saw her. Mia lay on the hospital bed looking like someone had used her face for boxing practice. 18 years old, tough as nails usually, but right now she looked like a broken little girl. Purple bruises covered her arms. Her left eye was swollen completely shut. Dad, her voice cracked. I pulled a chair up close, hands still shaking. I'm here, baby girl. Tell me what happened. The story came out in pieces, between sobs and anger. She's come home early from studying with her friend Jessica. Heard voices upstairs, found her mother Diane in bed with Uncle Steve, Steve Carter, Diane's older brother. The successful businessman with expensive suits and a smile that never reached his eyes. I screamed at them. Mia whispered. That's when these two huge guys came out of nowhere. Steve's bodyguards. They said I'd seen too much. The rage building in my chest was white hot, but I kept my voice steady. What exactly did they do? They grabbed me and threw me down the stairs. I hit my head on the banister. She touched the bandage on her forehead. Mom just stood there, Dad. She watched them hurt me and didn't do anything. I stood up. The soldier in me was waking up after 25 years of sleep. I'll be back soon. Dad, don't do anything crazy. I looked at my daughter's battered face. Nothing crazy. Sweetheart, just what needs doing. I stopped at the nurse's station on my way out. I need copies of everything. Medical reports, photos, all of it. Sir, that's not standard procedure, lady. Two men just beat my 18-year-old daughter and threw her down the stairs. Make it standard. My voice dropped to the tone I used to use on fresh recruits. Those bastards aren't walking away from this. She nodded and started making calls. In the parking lot, I made 2 calls of my own. First was to Bobby Martinez, a guy I'd served with in Iraq. Owed me a favor from when I'd pulled him out of a burning Humvee. It's Collins. Remember that favor? I'm calling it in. I need everything you can find on Steve Carter's business operations. Second call went to Detective Sarah Williams, someone I'd known since high school. Sarah, it's Jake. We need to talk about Steve Carter. Not at the station. This goes deeper than you think. I hung up and drove toward home, my mind already shifting into mission planning mode. You don't spend 10 years in the army without learning how to think tactically. Enemy assessment, available resources, wind conditions. My street looked normal when I pulled up. Too normal. Except for the 2 black Escalades parked in my driveway like they belonged there. Tinted windows, professional muscle trying to blend into a working-class neighborhood. Amateurs. I parked 3 blocks away and approached on foot. 25 years of civilian life. But muscle memory doesn't forget. Stay in the shadows, move quiet, treat every corner like it might hide an enemy. The front door of my house was wide open. Music pounded from inside. Fast so loud it covered my footsteps. I slipped around back and came in through the kitchen door. The smell hit me first. Expensive cigars and top-shelf whiskey. They were stinking up the house I'd built with my own hands. Drinking liquor I'd paid for. Celebrating in my living room. I could hear voices over the music. Steve's voice, arrogant and loud. You should have seen his face last Christmas. Clueless bastard. Dies like a robot. Coffee at 6. Work at 7. Predictable as sunrise. Diane's laugh, drunk and bitter. He never suspected a thing. Too busy with his precious construction projects and dirty work boots. 22 years of marriage. 22 years of coming home to her every night, believing every smile, every kiss, every I love you, all of it reduced to jokes in my own living room. You thought I was predictable. You were about to learn how wrong you were. I stepped into the doorway of my living room. Get the fuck out of my house. The music kept playing, but everything else stopped. Diane's wine glass slipped from her fingers, red wine spreading across the white carpet like blood. Steve's smirk died as he looked up from the couch, his arm still around my wife's shoulders. Two men in expensive suits stood near the windows. Big guys, probably 220 each, the kind of muscle that came from gyms and protein shakes. They looked professional until they saw my face. Well, Steve said, trying to sound amused. Look who finally came home. I didn't blink 5 seconds, then I start throwing people out myself. The younger bodyguard stepped forward, puffing his chest out like some peacock. Listen, old man, maybe you should. I moved before he finished talking. My hand shot to his throat, fingers finding the soft spot below his Adam's apple. 25 years of civilian life, but you never forget how to kill a man quickly. The guard dropped, gasping for air, and my knee drove into his stomach as he fell. The second guy was smarter. He reached for something under his jacket. I was faster, caught his wrist, twisted until bones cracked, and slammed his head against the wall. He dropped like a bag of cement. 10 seconds, 2 threats eliminated. Steve scrambled backward on the couch, dragging Diane with him. Jake, let's talk about this like reasonable adults. Reasonable? I walked toward them slowly. Like your boys were reasonable with my daughter. Diane opened her mouth. She shouldn't have been there. If she hadn't, my backhand caught her across the face before she could finish. She hit the couch hard, staring at me in shock. 22 years of marriage, and I'd never laid a hand on her until now. Don't, I said, voice cold as winter. Don't you fucking dare blame her for this. Steve tried to edge toward the door. I grabbed him by his expensive shirt and slammed him against the wall. His feet left the ground, his face turning red. Please, we can work this out, he wheezed. Like your boys work things out with me. I let him drop. Then my knee drove into his stomach. Steve folded over, gasping. My boot connected with his ribs once, twice. 3 times, the sound was like branches breaking. Diane was screaming now. You'll kill him, maybe. I grabbed Steve by his hair and forced him to look at me. My daughter's got a concussion because of you. Broken ribs, bruises all over her body. Time to return the favor. What happened next wasn't rage, it was calculation. Every punch, every kick was designed to cause maximum pain while keeping Steve conscious. I wanted him to feel everything. I wanted him to remember every second. When I was done, Steve lay curled on the carpet, blood soaking into the fibers I'd installed myself 2 summers ago. I turned to Diane. She was pressed against the couch, trembling. Pack your shit and get out. You've got 10 minutes. Where am I supposed to go? Ask your brother. I'm sure he's got a plan. The conscious bodyguard was helping his partner up, both of them avoiding eye contact. They grabbed Steve under his arms and started dragging him toward the door. This isn't over, Steve mumbled through bloody lips. I smiled for the first time since the hospital. You're right, it's just getting started. After they left, I sat in my chair and stared at the blood on my carpet. The house was quiet, but it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a crime scene. My phone buzzed. Detective Williams Collins, she said, voice tight with tension. I've been digging into Steve Carter like you asked. You're not going to like what I found. I already don't like anything about today. Tell me. Steve's been working with the Kozlov crime family for years. Money laundering, real estate scams, protection rackets. He's deeper in organized crime than we thought. She paused. And Jake, your wife isn't just having an affair. She's been helping him. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. What do you mean helping him? Moving money through shell companies, setting up fake businesses, transferring funds to offshore accounts. They've been planning this for months. Divorce papers are already drawn up. Once they drained your accounts, they were going to leave you holding Steve's debts to some very dangerous people. The phone creaked in my grip. How much money we talking about? Everything you have, joint accounts, retirement funds, savings, even Mia's college fund. If this had played out, you'd have been broke and owing the Russian mob about $2 million. How long has this been going on? At least 8 months, maybe longer. Jake, there's something else. Dan took out a life insurance policy on you 4 months ago, $750,000. The words hit me like a freight train. They weren't just planning to rob me, they were planning to kill me. Send me everything you have, they said. Jake, don't do anything stupid. The Kozlovs don't forgive and forget. You're not untouchable. Neither are they, I said, and hung up. I sat in my ruined living room, mind working through the implications. Steve and Diane hadn't just betrayed me. They'd planned to destroy me completely, take my money, leave me with mob debts, and collect insurance money when the Russians killed me for not paying. You thought I was just some old construction guy. Time to show you what this old construction guy learned in Iraq. I walked to my bedroom closet and moved aside the clothes. Behind them was a false panel I'd built when I moved in. Inside was a military-issued safe, one of the few things I'd kept from my army days. The combination was Mia's birthday. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside were things Diane had never known about: my medals, my commendations, and a leather-bound book filled with names and phone numbers. Men who owed me favors from the days when violence wasn't just survival, it was duty. Some were retired soldiers, others were private contractors who specialized in making problems disappear quietly. All of them owed me their lives. I hadn't wanted to be that man again. I'd buried that part of myself 25 years ago, traded it for morning coffee and weekend barbecues, but they'd brought war to my home. They'd hurt my daughter. They'd planned to destroy everything I'd built. This wouldn't be quick, and it wouldn't be clean, but it would be thorough. I wasn't going to kill them. Death was too easy, too final. I wanted something worse. I wanted Steve, Diane, and everyone connected to them to lose everything, piece by piece, just like they'd planned for me. The next morning, I visited Mia in the hospital. She was sitting up, looking better but still broken. "How are you feeling, baby girl?" "Like I got hit by a truck." She tried to smile. "Dad, I need to tell you something. This isn't the first time Uncle Steve has been around. He's been visiting for months, always when you were at work." I sat down beside her bed. "Tell me everything you remember." They'd whisper when you weren't home. Sometimes Mom would disappear for hours and come back dressed up like she'd been somewhere fancy. She said it was for real estate business. But Mia looked down. "I saw papers in her car last week. Legal documents. I should have told you. You're not responsible for their choices," I said gently. "But I need you to remember everything: dates, times, anything that seemed weird." It started about 8 months ago. Uncle Steve would show up during the day, and they'd talk in the bedroom or by his car. Sometimes Mom would get phone calls and step outside to talk. Mia's voice got stronger. I heard her mention bank accounts once, and something about Cayman Islands. I squeezed her hand. "You did good, sweetheart. Now I need you to focus on getting better while I take care of this. What are you going to do?" I looked at my daughter's bruised face. "I'm going to make sure they never hurt anyone again." That afternoon, I met Bobby Martinez at a diner outside town. He slid a thick folder across the table. "Your instincts were right," Bobby said. "Steve Carter is drowning in debt to some very bad people. The Kozlovs have been fronting him money for failed real estate deals, and he's desperate." He opened the folder. "Your wife's been helping him for months. Moving money, setting up shell companies, planning to disappear with everything you own." I studied the documents. Bank statements, photos of Diane and Steve entering banks together, records of fake companies set up in her name. How much have they stolen? Almost everything. They were smart about it, moving small amounts at first, then larger ones. By the time he noticed, it would have been too late. Bobby slid a flash drive across the table. "There's more. Diane's been keeping insurance policies of her own, photos, bank records. Probably to blackmail Steve if things went south." That night, I went through Diane's home office. She'd always kept it locked, but she'd forgotten that I'd built this house. I knew where every key was hidden. In her filing cabinet, I found everything Bobby had described. Photos of her and Steve together, transaction records, correspondence with offshore banks. She's kept it all, probably to protect herself when things went bad. I spread the evidence across the dining room table like a battle plan. Every document was a weapon. Every photo was ammunition. This wasn't going to be about broken bones anymore. This was going to be about precision strikes that would bring down their entire operation. The plan was simple: turn Steve's victims against him, expose the corruption protecting him, let his own greed and the Kozlov family's justice system do the rest. I started by sending anonymous emails to everyone Steve and his business partner had cheated over the past 2 years. I attached bank statements, shell company records, photos of secret meetings. The message was short: you deserve to know who stole from you. Bring every document you have to Steve Carter's office building tomorrow at 9 a.m. The media will be there. By morning, over 30 people had responded. Widows whose savings Steve had stolen, small business owners he's cheated, contractors he's never paid, all of them ready for justice. Next, I targeted Judge Morrison, the corrupt official who'd been protecting Steve's operations. Bobby had given me photos of Morrison taking bribes, records of drug purchases, bank statements showing payoffs. I packaged everything into anonymous envelopes and sent them to 3 major news outlets in the Bay. The story broke that evening. By the next morning, Judge Morrison was suspended and under federal investigation. Steve's legal protection evaporated overnight. Then came the offshore accounts. I called in a favor from Tommy Chen, a cybersecurity specialist I'd served with. Tommy owed me his life from when I'd carried him out of an ambush in Fallujah. Within 2 days, Tommy had exposed every hidden account, every fake trust, every dollar Steve and Diane had stolen. He rerouted the information to ER's whistleblower channels and triggered audits across every company connected to Steve. By the time Steve realized what was happening, millions were frozen, and federal investigators were closing in. The beauty of it was that I never touched a single dollar myself. I didn't need the money, I needed justice. Tuesday morning, I parked across from Steve's office building with binoculars. The crowd was gathering just like I'd planned, former victims, their families. Local media, some carried signs calling Steve a thief. The anger was electric. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Williams, warrant signed, moving in as soon as the crowd blocks the exits. Steve's black Mercedes pulled into the parking lot at exactly 9 a.m. I watched him step out, adjusting his expensive suit, confidence radiating from every step. Then he saw the crowd. They surged toward him, shouting accusations, waving documents, cameras recording everything. A news van pulled up, reporters racing to capture the chaos. I made a phone call from my truck. Mr. Carter, this is Agent Davis with the buy. We're in your building lobby with some people who'd like to discuss their missing money. Through the binoculars, I watched Steve freeze like a deer in headlights. The crowd pressed closer, their voices getting louder, angrier. The cameras rolled as Steve tried to retreat to his car, but the people he'd cheated blocked every escape route. Detective Williams's unmarked car appeared, lights flashing. Within minutes, federal agents surrounded the building. Steve was arrested on live television, his face pale as reporters shouted questions. My phone buzzed with updates throughout the day. Steve's accounts frozen, seizing everything. Kozlov's found out about the missing money. Steve's on his own now. Diane's hiding at a motel downtown. Broken, scared, I lowered the binoculars, watching Steve being led away in handcuffs. The first domino had fallen, the rest would follow. 3 days later, my phone rang. Diane, Jake, please, you have to help me. Her voice was panicked, desperate. Steve's dead. They found his body in the warehouse district. The accounts are frozen. I have nothing left. I kept my voice calm. You made your choice. You don't understand. I didn't know they'd kill him. I didn't know it would go this far. You knew enough to take out life insurance on me. You knew enough to help them steal everything I'd worked for. Silence on the other end. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to sign the divorce papers my lawyer sends. You're going to disappear. If you ever contact me or Mia again, I'll make sure every federal investigator in the state gets copies of what I found in your office. Jake, please, 10 minutes to decide. Sign the papers or spend the rest of your life in federal prison. I hung up. The papers were signed and delivered within the hour. Diane was gone from town by evening, taking only what she could carry. No money, no allies. Nowhere to go. Over the next week, the news kept rolling in. Judge Morrison was indicted on federal corruption charges. Steve's business partner was arrested and cooperating with authorities to save himself from decades in prison. The Kozlov family, eager to avoid federal attention, cut all ties to Steve's operations and erased any evidence of their involvement. I watched it all unfold from my kitchen table, drinking coffee that didn't taste like shit anymore. By the time the dust settled, there was no evidence connecting me to any of it. I'd simply provided information to the right people and let justice take its course. Mia came home from the hospital on a Thursday. The bruises were fading, but she carried herself differently now, stronger, more determined. How are you feeling? I asked as she settled into the living room. Better, different. She looked around the house. It feels clean now, like all the poison is gone. That evening, we had dinner with Bobby, Tommy, and Detective Williams, old friends sharing more stories and looking toward the future. It's over, Williams said, raising her beer. Steve is dead, Diane's gone, and every piece of their operation is destroyed. The victims are getting their money back. Tommy nodded. And there's no trace connecting you to any of it. You planned this perfectly. I kept my expression neutral. I didn't do this for revenge. I did it for her. I looked at Mia, who was listening quietly. Dad, Mia said finally, I've been thinking about what I want to study in college. Yeah, criminal justice, financial crimes. I want to fight people like Steve and Uncle Morrison. I want to protect people the way you protected me. I felt pride swell in my chest. The world needs more people like that. Later, after everyone left and Mia had gone to bed, I sat by the living room window. The city lights stretched out in the distance, peaceful and steady. I thought about Steve, dead in some warehouse because he'd crossed the wrong people. I thought about Diane, alone and broke, probably wondering how it all went so wrong. They'd looked at me and seen a predictable old construction worker, someone easy to fool, easy to use, easy to destroy. They'd forgotten that this predictable old construction worker had spent 10 years learning how to identify enemies, plan operations, and eliminate threats. I finished my coffee and headed to bed. Tomorrow was Friday. I had a construction crew to manage, a daughter to take care of, and a life to rebuild. But if anyone else ever made the mistake of thinking Jake Collins was just some harmless old man, well, they'd learn the same lesson Steve Carter learned. Some mistakes you only get to make once. The city kept moving outside my window. But for me, the war was over. I'd won, and everyone who mattered was safe. That's all that ever really mattered. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to check out more stories on my channel.